Hello and welcome to episode 1 of series 5 of the Engaging Internal Comms podcast. This is the show for employee engagers and internal communicators who like to keep up to date with all that is new in our profession. My name's Craig Smith from The Big Picture People. Welcome to this 5th series of the Engaging Internal Comms podcast. So we started in 2020 in the midst of the pandemic, and we're still going and really enjoying the interviews that we're putting out and the people we're speaking to, and I hope you're finding the show useful too. If you're listening to this in real time, a very happy start to 2024, and I hope you've had a great holiday season wherever or however you enjoy it. So, what have we got coming up in this series? So, after today's interview, coming up on the next episode, I have an interview with Emily Hecker, who is going to be telling us all about how you can manage your internal comms with a team of one or with a very small team with limited resources. Emily's just written a book all about that topic, and she's going to be telling us all about how you can bootstrap, leverage, call it what you want, get the most out of your team, yourself and your organization's investment in internal communications when you have limited resources. And I think that will resonate with quite a lot of our listeners who often say that they feel they're a little bit under-resourced and are trying to do everything themselves or with a small team. So that's coming up on the 16th of January. And then after that, on the 30th of January, we have an interview with Christine Cook. Christine works for Lloyd's Register Foundation, and she's going to be telling us all about the importance of social purpose, which is a strong thing with the Lloyd's Register Foundation. And then coming up after that, I won't give you the specific episodes, but we've got an interview with a retired spy who's going to be telling us all about his exploits and what he's learnt from his years in espionage and how that now relates into organisational communications, which is an interesting parallel. We're going to be looking at the pay gap and the impact that pay difference and disparity has, and how we need to factor that into internal communications, not just about pay, but about other things as well. We're going to be looking at retention, turnover, and absenteeism, and the role that internal communications plays in keeping them as high or low as possible, depending on which one. You want high retention and relatively low turnover and absenteeism, of course. And then we're also going to be looking at AI. Artificial intelligence, AI, and the impact that is having on internal communications. I know there's been a lot about that in the last year, and we've covered it briefly in previous episodes, but we're going to be going into that in a lot more detail. And we've got other interviews in the pipeline that we're going to be recording early in January, so that's all good as well. So that's about it from me. Just to say, just in terms of our own business, it's our 25th year at the Big Picture People, and just to say that if any of you are looking at different ways to communicate your company vision, your strategy, if you're looking to maybe do a relaunch this year, get in touch with us at info@thebigpicturepeople.co.uk. We're doing a lot of that work. We have done for the last 25 years, and we're finding a lot of organisations at the moment are really keen on reconnecting their people to their purpose, to their direction, their values, particularly as we are, now out of the pandemic and starting to get back into some sense of normality, albeit that there's still lots of things going on that are concerning us. So that's a little bit about us, and if you're interested in that, as I say, get in touch at the info@thebigpicturepeople.co.uk, and I'll personally try and get back to you myself, and we can hook up and make arrange a call just to find out what it is you're doing and see if there's anything that we can do and share some of our experience with you, what we've done in the past. Anyway, that's enough of that. Let's get into this episode's interview. We've covered the topic of workplace culture on numerous episodes within the show, but I know it's something that we always like to cover, and I know it's something that's always highly relevant to employee engagers and internal communicators. So we're going to be talking to someone on today's show who has just written a book all about jump-starting your organisational workplace culture, and he's going to be sharing with us some of his ideas that were within the book. And one of the 3 areas that we're going to explore in this interview, one is around the misconception that sometimes exists within organisations with regard to culture and how much time we spend on it explicitly and in terms of improving our organizational culture. We're going to be looking at 5 factors which will help us to improve our organizational culture and workplace culture. And the final thing is we're going to be looking at what our interviewee talks about as the hourglass model, and that's quite an interesting way of deconstructing the work that we do when it comes to translating and sharing our strategy and our culture within our organization. Our interviewee has a vast amount of experience in corporate life, so he only recently has left a corporate enterprise where he's had a lot of experience of building workplace culture. So all of this comes from someone who has a vast amount of experience working as a manager, as an operator within these organizations at a very senior level. So hope you'll find this an interesting interview. It's the first of a couple that we've got coming up in future episodes where we're going to be speaking to authors who have recently published books. And if you'd like to buy a copy of Eric's book that you'll be hearing about in this interview, you can buy it through an affiliate link that we have, which is bit.ly, so bit.ly /Eric Stone 1. So that's bit.ly /Eric Stone 1, and that Eric Stone 1 is all one word. So if you type that in and go to the link there, it takes you to Amazon, and we get a small commission from that purchase. You don't pay any extra for the book, but we get a little bit of a commission, and that helps us to fund the show and future episodes. And if you can't remember that URL for the link there to Amazon, it's in the show notes on our website, and there's also a QR code that you can just scan and you can go straight to the link there. And if you buy the book through that link, as I say, it just helps the show out, helps us to keep the show free and without any ads. Thanks a lot. My guest in this episode is Eric Stone. Eric has a passion for business, which led him to an influential 26-year career at the most iconic rental car company, Enterprise Holdings, where he quickly became one of the most decorated regional vice presidents in the company's history. Eric retired from Enterprise in 2018 and founded ClearPath Ventures, which specializes in guiding young professionals and businesses as they navigate their path to success. Eric has served on the boards of multiple community-focused nonprofits, which focus on providing strategies and resources to close the opportunity gap for marginalized groups. So, hello, Eric. How are you?
Craig, I am doing great. It's a pleasure to be on your podcast and speaking with your audience.
That's fantastic. And Eric, where for our listeners, whereabouts in the world are you? I think we can establish you're probably in the United States, but whereabouts in the US are you, please?
Yeah, so the Connecticut coast, a lovely town called Old Lyme, Connecticut, right near Massachusetts, Rhode Island, kind of tucked away. Beautiful place.
Fantastic. And you're saying it's a little bit on the cool side at the moment for you out there, yeah?
The fall has begun here, so we're coming off a crisp, summer, so it is a little cool today. It's in the 50s. Not that that's too cool, but
I'm sure there's plenty more to come.
That's right.
Absolutely. So I gave a little bit of an introduction there to your career, Eric, and obviously 26 years is a really long career. You had a fantastic career at Enterprise Holdings. Do you want to tell us a little bit about, it's going to be, you can summarize 26 years in a few minutes, but tell us a little bit about what's led you to what you're doing now and a little bit more detail about maybe what it is you're doing now.
Yeah. Well, as you said, I was very fortunate. I found a company that I could grow with and learned an awful lot with an enterprise. I would start in being one of 4 in an office to slowly climbing that corporate ladder to eventually leading a team of a few hundred and being an officer of the company. And through my experience with whether it was enterprise or some board experiences, I felt I had a message that I wanted to pass on. And instead of maybe getting it to a few hundred people, which is great, I wanted to have an opportunity to scale that message. And so I did a few things. One, I created a book called Jumpstart Your Workplace Culture. And then I started doing speaking and individual coaching and consulting to organizations or individuals who are really trying to get that special thing together. And I've always had a love for business. I've always had a love for what organizations do to bring a group of people together and perform at a really high level for an extended period of time. like my New England Patriots used to do, and it's been a passion for a long, long time.
Excellent. So what was it when you within your time at Enterprise then that really got you hooked on this idea of organizational culture? Just to maybe give it a flavor for how you developed this interest and this passion for culture.
Yeah, I mean, it goes even before enterprise to the love of business, to my parents being in business, mom a teacher, learning how to coach and train and develop her students, and my dad in textiles and learning how to create strong relationships.
Mm.
And so I always had this liking, and of course had my own little odd jobs business with a buddy growing up. And I took all of those loves and really found a place that I could, and a topic that I could really grow within. And I used to get asked quite often in my corporate career, what are you doing within your team to create a high sales culture, a high customer service culture, a high overall performance culture as a team? And it always resonated with me that it looked like we were doing something pretty special, where there were so many talented people within the company who were leading teams, but our team was fortunate enough to come together and outperform the majority. And so the question was, how do you do it?
Mm.
And I felt it wasn't too complicated. This topic is a little bit misunderstood at times, and I felt that I had something to give. And I wanted to be able to unlock people's potential. I didn't like that always. It seemed like people were always frustrated going to work. And I felt you can bring some happiness, yet perform at a high level. And so I kind of took all of the questions from the past and where I grew up and what I loved and framed it into an approach.
Excellent. And you mentioned your book, and we'll come back to that at the end, and we'll talk about how people can find the book. Jumpstart Your Workplace Culture. I think that's something you've has recently been published. Is that the case, Eric?
Craig, right on. It
Yeah.
was October 3rd. It officially launched. So
Wow. Okay. So at the time of recording, that's last week. So yeah, fantastic. So excellent. How long did it? And I know books. I've written a couple myself, and I know how it seems like a great idea at the time, and then you get involved in it, and it turns out to be something that's a lot more involved than you thought it was going to be. Well, how long did that take you to write the book then, Eric?
it took several years. And you're
Yeah.
so right, Craig, and congrats for having several books. But the way I frame the book process is anytime you're trying to do something, and this is in business and life, that's either outside of your zone or you're trying to do something special, a third of the time it's amazing. And so,
Mm.
you're in the writing and you're doing interviews and you feel great. And then a third of the time it's okay. It's all
Yeah.
right. And then the final third, it is really challenging. And you almost at times want to say, why am I even doing this?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you pull them all together, and luckily the top third brings you through it with the middle third. And so it was a few-year writing process. But it wasn't a full-time thing. It was something I was doing as a little with other things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Many years.
Yeah. Well, many congratulations. It's a huge achievement. So well done on that. And yeah. So let's maybe delve into some of the things about in the book then. And I know we've chosen 3 areas to talk about, which we spoke about when we had our kind of preliminary conversation a few weeks ago. And I'll kind of headline what they are now, and then we'll kind of go into them in a little bit more detail. So the first one is this misconception that some organizations have, which is we don't have any time for engagement. You're going to talk about the 5 factors of engagement, and then we're also going to talk about the hourglass model. So that's sort of signposting 3 of the things that we're going to be talking about, Eric. And let's maybe just, before we dive into those in detail, then, do you want to just give a brief synopsis of what the book's about? Is it a handbook? Is it a kind of cover to cover story? Tell us a little bit about the style of the book, and also, in addition to those 3 sort of things we're going to delve into, any kind of structure to the book, or any kind of key elements? Yeah,
Absolutely. So really it is a practical roadmap. And so it goes all along the journey through what you will eventually talk about through this hourglass approach of how you go into an organization or lead a team and do something very, very special. So the misconception, actually not even necessarily about engagement, but it's about culture. Is really the big thing. And it's a topic of which people think it's very soft and philosophical. It's about hugs and high fives and built on rousing speeches, and you can't really measure it. And so part of my thing was trying to demystify that. And it's really written as a road trip.
Mm,
And it is a metaphor throughout the book that I'll utilize to from the hiring, how do you hire for match of a culture? How do
mm,
you train and create this amazing learning experience from kind of hire to retire? And how do you create these culture carriers? And culture carriers are those who really are your voice of your organization
mm, mm.
and really get the mission, vision, values, and are full in on it. And can you even measure it, which is sometimes misunderstood? And in my writings, I talk a little bit about some of those things, about how you would approach checking the health of your culture, but it's all in the form of a metaphorical road trip to
Mm.
make it easy to digest. And I was a practical, love being an operator within business. And I felt the best way for someone to enjoy the reading experience is to use that metaphor that really helps learning stick, or it certainly did for me, and keeps me engaged throughout the book.
Mm. Excellent. Oh, very good. Yeah, and I like the jump leads that you've got on the front cover there with the cup of coffee. That's a nice visual sort of metaphor as well.
That's right. I hate to tell you how long that cover design took, but it turned out great.
I can imagine. I can imagine. Okay, so yeah, as you correctly said, the misconception isn't just about engagement; it's about culture. So let's dive into that a little bit more, then, Eric. And where does that misconception come from? I think you've alluded to it a little bit already. And how do we start to tackle that misconception that culture is somehow some sort of like fluffy, nice to have that we'll kind of do when we've got the time for it? What are some of the challenges that organizations and leaders face in that
Yeah,
situation?
I think the really special organizations find a way. I mean, you have to have empathy,
Hmm.
with accountability, and so it's like everything in life. It's a bit of a balance, and so how do you do that? How do you create this understanding of what people might be going through, while at the same time setting this real high standard?
Mm,
How do you have high character and look for high standard?
mm,
And so those are a lot of the things and it's also not just an HR function. This is leadership. And as I mentioned before, the culture carrier's role is to really talk about this and reinforce the message all the time. And I think the most simplistic thing is downloading whatever your organization's doing
mm,
through all levels with certain settings of how often do we do these top three initiatives potentially, to what settings are we going to go over those things. And so I think those are some tools that really I hope the book brings that will
mm,
help people say you can do both. It is not one layer. It is not the ping pong table. It is not about the food in the cafeteria. You do have to list your values of an organization, but everyone does that. The
mm,
bigger thing is, do you have the behaviors that are coached and trained through your organization? And do you actually live your values?
mm, mm.
And I think those are a few things that will help reshape, in my opinion, what high performance culture is all about.
Yeah. You've mentioned a couple of times this idea of the culture carriers, and I think we kind of get what that is. They're the kind of, they're your sort of internal cultural brand ambassadors. They're the people who kind of carry the flag and really kind of walk the talk. From your experience, are these kind of self-selecting? Do we need to kind of give them any special support, or do we just like point them in the right direction and just let them get on with it? What's your experience around that, Eric?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think there can be both. I know
Mm,
one thing that I enjoy doing, and I think a lot of organizations who perform at a high level, is they do have some sort of group leadership team.
mm,
I called mine the think tank, where you would bring in individuals. For me, it was always the people who would be part of the think tank were assigned by their peers. So it
yeah.
wasn't by me. I wanted others to rubber stamp that those are the people who we really think could help strategically lead this company or organization or wherever you're from. And so for me, I had their peers assign it. It was actually at the branch level. So it'd be someone who would run a particular store. And we would meet and we would go over, they would create an agenda, they would submit everything in advance. It was
Yeah.
all about strategy, solutions, and what do we need to be mindful of for the future. And it was really important that they understood I did not want them to just yes me to death. It was polite disagreement. It was some really good dialogue that would help us prepare for something that usually is unexpected.
Yeah.
But you could certainly also, there are others who will eventually go in, who want to hopefully be part of that group.
Yeah.
While they're not on it, they can act as if they want to be part of it. And when you really have something special, when I used to have people say, hey, Eric, how do I get on that think tank? And so they rotate in and out for about a year. We go over some extra training and coaching for those individuals as well.
Yeah.
And the only thing I really tried to do is just make sure we had a little bit mixture of diversity in everything,
Yeah.
diversity of thought, as ethnicity.
Yeah.
And so we would get the best of everybody.
Yeah. 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 I like that kind of, we talked about this before on the show around whether you call them, change champions or ambassadors or whatever. I think it's really important to kind of highlight what good looks like and really not promote these people as in give them, kind of promote them up the career spectrum, but promote them in terms of, give them a voice, give them visibility and demonstrating that actually, what these people do, regardless of what level they are in the organization, is really, really important to kind of keeping that flag moving forward. So yeah, I like that idea.
Craig, I'll tell you the thing that I'd recommend people make sure they do is, it's one thing to have a group. It's one thing to have a mentor program or a think tank or whatever employee resource group you might have. It's another thing to take that stuff and truly create a list of accomplishments that get downloaded to your entire team. It's not supposed to be a secret that room has.
Yeah.
The question is challenging everybody to say, what do we need to do to continue to be great?
Yeah.
And how do we get this information that we have come up with potentially into our training process? So the new hire, the 3-month, the 6-month, the 6-year, all are in alignment. And I think that is where the really great organizations, what they do really well is they take that information, they don't keep it a secret.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, Eric, so I want to move on to the next thing we're going to talk about, which are the 5 factors of engagement. And again, this is something I believe is in your book. Do you want to just kind of maybe call out what those 5 factors of engagement are, if I've got the right terminology anyway, or correct me if I haven't. But yeah, what are those 5 factors that you cover in the book?
Yeah, so these are 5 key things that if you can really live them through your organization, and under each factor have a few initiatives for every level, really good outcomes tend to happen. And this is according to the Gallup studies, that with great engagement, with elite engagement, your business outcomes, your customer service and loyalty improves 10% when you compare the top half quartile from Gallup to the bottom half quartile.
Yeah.
Your customer your sales productivity, I should say, increases 18%. Your profitability increases 23%. You reduce absenteeism. And so the 5 factors that I talk about, first one is developing a strong relationship with your manager. The number one reason they leave their company usually is because of a dissatisfaction with their immediate supervisor. And so what are the things that you do as an organization for every level that truly create a strong relationship? And that's from the onboarding and interviewing and training and in and out of work. The second one, and once trust is built, it's amazing what people will open up and tell you.
Yeah.
And so if you want unique results, you got to have unique relationships. The second is just clear communication of expectations and goals.
Yeah.
And so it's amazing what happens when you can have this simple, clear message that is throughout your entire organization. And you match the how often we might go over these goals, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, to the what setting, in what setting, virtual, phone, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And so being very clear with that. The third is, giving your team the right material and equipment to achieve the desired outcome.
Yeah.
And so what sort of training from that, as I mentioned, hire through the process of someday retire, that you're giving your team the opportunity? The more I felt I could give my team, I actually felt more comfortable challenging them. I wanted to remove every obstacle that could be in the way. And I wanted to give them the tools and not have the mindset that, hey, I hired you, we're paying you, get the job done. That just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Then it is establishing the fourth one is truly growing personally and professionally. So personal and professional development, understanding what the employee's personal goals might be, as well as their business goals and what those are. And that's really important because what I always tried to teach in the workplace, I did want them to take some of that and be better at home. And
Yeah.
so this is the fourth one. And then the fifth one is just recognition of top performance. And you got to recognize effort, but reward high level performance. And you want to have the right number of categories. You want to have the right categories to drive the right behaviors. You want a diverse mix of categories and create this recognition form that
Yeah.
gets people to kind of push a little bit more.
Yeah. Excellent. No, I think that's a really nice kind of roadmap, like, as your book is called. I mean, what we'll do there, Eric, because I'm always conscious when we give lists like that on the show that people kind of, if they're, particularly if they're over the gym or whatever they're doing, they kind of sort of. So what I'll do is we'll put those into the show notes, those five points, and obviously you go into them in a lot more detail in the book as well. So if people obviously really want to delve into those, they need to have a look at the book. But yeah, that's fantastic. And where did they come from, Eric? Are they your kind of based on your own expertise, your own background? I know you said some of them are linked to Gallup, and they
Yeah,
wrote the Gallup.
it was after years and years of learning, and sometimes of what I was doing wrong, and then pulling from people. And so I honestly don't remember how we formulated all those five. I would say Gallup was certainly a piece of it. And what it usually said is, if you can have these things together with research, I mean, if you're going to do anything, it is good to have data. And by gathering that data, we had the answers to the test. If you could do these sorts of things, you do get outcomes. It's a very human-centric approach. It is a lot about listening, observing, and learning. It's about setting the standard, a high bar. And so if we have the answers that say, if you do these things, great things happen, they became really, I would have the company values, or anyone I work with, their organizational values. And then the next list is just these five factors. And under everything we would do, or anyone I work with, those five are listed, and every initiative under each of those five are highlighted and talked about on a consistent basis. It's almost like a lather, rinse, repeat. Everyone has to understand that we care.
Yeah. Excellent. And then the third part that we want to talk about, and again, I guess we're in the risk here of describing something that we can't see because of the nature of it's being an audio medium, is the hourglass model. And again, you mentioned that earlier in one of the other things we were talking about, Eric. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about this hourglass model, and we'll try and draw this mental picture in our heads as we sort of look at an hourglass?
Absolutely. So when you would try to envision, as you're doing your workout on a run or in the car on a commute, think of the top part of an hourglass. And really that is the kind of discovery area where you're pulling information to learn about your business, depending on the area it is, from your customers, clients, vendors, employees, board members, whoever it is, right? So on the top, you're doing this discovery. And as you discover an opportunity, or you discover your blueprint as you are defining it, the hourglass kind of comes out a little bit and then is really forming into the narrow part where the sand goes through. As it goes out, it's where you're taking the feedback and really committing to the 3 to 5 priorities you have. And right where the sand goes through is clarity. It is everything that you want people to really understand. You're taking all this, synthesizing the information to that. From there, as the hourglass will then go out, it gets shaped outward, is where you're now taking the information and going through training, reviews, reinforcement in meeting settings, wherever it may be, to get the message to everybody all the time. Very simple, very clear. Now, where the sand will eventually land is really the assessment period. So now the sand's on the ground, I guess, or the bottom of the hourglass. And now you've got to look at the information and how did we do? And these are usually an engagement survey, or I use an assessment process to measure culture. And right when you think you have it, guess what happens? Well, something tends to go on, technology, a pandemic, or
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
and you turn the hourglass over and use a similar approach. There's a few other things that are important. First of all, it is an hourglass, which means we do this together. The leader's going to obviously frame it and synthesize it and package it nicely. So when it goes through that hourglass, everyone understands it.
Yeah.
But it's not an eyeglass. It's not an eye thing. It is not. It's not one individual who's doing the heavy lifting. It's an hourglass, and an hourglass is the word OUR, so hour. The other important thing to remember with an hourglass is usually there are two foundational things on the side. And to me, those are your guiding boundaries. Those to the left, one of your foundations would be your mission, vision, and values that are going to guide you. And to the right, the other pillar or foundation is going to be your policies and procedures that help you make decisions that support your values.
Okay. Okay.
And so it was a nice, easy way to hopefully use that as an analogy or a metaphor that helps people really understand a simple approach. And it's just really a five-stepper.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. It's a really nice way of kind of synthesizing what is quite a lot of complex moving parts and that. And again, is that something you've kind of created yourself as just an assimilation of your ideas over the
No,
years?
it was while writing the book, I really wanted to have, just like the book was a metaphor of this road trip or journey, because culture, you can't build it overnight.
Yeah.
I wanted something that would stick and that would resemble my approach to building high performance culture. And Hourglass just came up. And then I wanted, just like a lot of people were, I'm no Simon Sinek here, but he has his golden circle and
Yeah.
he kind of draws it. It just kind of makes sense. Or there's something called, it's a Japanese term called ikigai that really brings people for a sense of belonging and being together. And so this was my way to help people really think it through.
Yeah. Excellent. And then just finally, Eric, just to sort of cover off the internal communications angle, because this is a podcast for internal communicators. I know you had another model that we didn't mention at the beginning, but you got the ABC model, which is all about amplify, buffer, convey. And again, I like these sort of things that are easy to remember and sort of say what they do. They do what they say they do. So, is that something you've covered in the book as well, or is that something peripheral to that, or is that another way? Yeah.
That is covered in the book, and again, very very simple but effective. And so, amplify is when the message comes, whether it's your message or from corporate or whomever, and it's something that everyone needs to know. Meaning, everyone needs to get the email, probably have a conference call, might be in-person meeting. It could be part of the town hall that the leadership might have. It's posted everywhere. It's a new policy. It's a new contest. It's a new technology. It's something vital that you must amplify. I find those are, believe it or not, the hardest things. The things that tend to get amplified, believe it or not, are usually the negativity.
Yeah.
If you're not careful within your organization, that tends to rip through your organization way too quick.
Yeah.
But amplifying so people understand what you're doing. Maybe it's a pay raise. And how do you truly benefit and let everybody know why we're making that decision? So you don't have someone say, well, I'm getting 10 grand, but after taxes, you really want to have things amplified the right way to communicate it.
Yeah.
And then there's the buffer.
Okay.
We all know that there is so much information and so many channels you would get. It's just like the news cycle. It never ends. It's 24/7. There's always something new coming. And you need to be able to take the complications in business and life, and you need to take that 5-page document and maybe it becomes a paragraph that you buffer the message. You're kind of, I call it in the book, you become really the distraction catcher so people don't get confused, don't think there's a flavor of the week. It's not too much information. And so the buffer is a really critical one. And I use the distraction catcher as an analogy. And then the C is pretty easy. It's convey. It's your ESPN fans, did you know stuff? It's stuff that would probably just be best served via an email. Maybe it's a team huddle in the morning, whatever those may be, usually quick hitters. and you just want to bring it to someone's attention.
Yeah, yeah. So actually, I understand the model because I know I put it into the show notes we're going to discuss. So they aren't like three steps to a communication. These are three levels of which how you would communicate or what you would communicate. It's three different kind of categories, I guess, of information, all the way from the sort of stuff that you
Yeah.
just need to tell them, other stuff you really need to shout out, and other stuff that you need to kind of catch and sort of buffer, as you say. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that really should be part of a training, depending on the level. It's almost like running a meeting. Everyone thinks everyone knows how to run a meeting, and the reason meetings are so bad is because only 25% of leadership are trained on running an effective meeting. And
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
communication. This is everyone needs to understand those ABCs. You
Mm.
could almost use that into any time management technique. Frankly,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it really saves. So
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of a prioritization, I guess, and also, which is going to really require a lot of conscious effort and energy and really thinking about it versus other stuff that's just, needs to be passed along the chain, as it were. So yeah. So Eric, you've given us lots of information and really helpful advice there. Well, any final tips, either from the book or just from your life in general, in terms of what organizations can do to really jumpstart their workplace culture and get things moving forward, if or keep them moving forward if they're already moving forward?
well, in addition to what we've talked about, I do think it's important that companies with their values are listing several behaviors under each value,
Mm,
so people can understand
yeah,
how what honesty and integrity to you, Craig, might be a little different than me. What are the behaviors that are under there, and then
absolutely.
ensuring that your big time decisions follow and are leaded, by your values. And I use an example as simple as, if customer service is a priority and if you're pounding your chest on how you live and die by it, but then you promote someone in your organization who has terrible or just below average results, you're undermining everything you're trying to do. And so what I find is people just tend to make their jobs much harder than they need to be. But a few key takeaways would clearly be the values and behaviors piece, the engagement factor, the hourglass approach. And I do have a workbook that if someone chooses to buy the book, there are probably, I think it's 11 or 12 exercises that you can utilize within your organization that will help you build this high performance culture.
Excellent, excellent. Well, that's nice. Thank you, Eric. And that takes us on nicely just to kind of closing out. So in the show notes, we're going to put your LinkedIn profile as well. So if people want to connect with you and link and reach out to you and connect your network, that's great. We're also going to put a link into the book itself. So a link there to start your workplace culture. And we chatted just briefly before we started recording, that will be an affiliate link. So just to be completely transparent, if you buy the book through that link, we on the show, it helps us to keep the show advert free and funds our future interviews and all the software we need to run the podcast. So if you do want to buy Eric's book, buy it through that. Eric still gets his full retail value, and we just get a little bit back from Amazon. So if you want to use the link in the show notes, that will be great. And yeah, anything else we can add into the show notes, Eric, just to help people reach out to you? I guess your LinkedIn profile, link to the book. Anything else you'd like us to add?
I think LinkedIn is probably the best place to start. I would
Yeah,
then say Instagram under ClearPath Ventures
yeah,
_
yeah.
and you could certainly go to clearpathventures.com and you'd have a chance to see my either individual coaching, organizational coaching, or speaking opportunities should people need.
Excellent. Well, we'll put those into the show notes for you as well, Eric, and for our listeners, so they can follow up on those opportunities to connect with you. So that's been fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Eric. But all the best with the book, and I hope well, I'm sure it will sell very well, and it continues to do so. And obviously, this episode is going to be going out a little bit later, probably early in the next year. So that hopefully gives people a bit of a reminder who hadn't picked up on the book on the first wave of the launch to go and search for it and to get themselves a copy.
Craig, I appreciate the opportunity to be on the show. It's off to a great start so far from the pre-order process, and I'm hoping that it has an opportunity to, frankly, just help people get better and share a message that I think is fairly practical, but very effective.
Excellent. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Eric. You take care now.
You too.
Bye-bye. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Engaging Internal Comms podcast. If you've got any ideas for episodes you'd like us to cover in future, you can email us at info@thebigpicturepeople.co.uk, or you can use the feedback form at engagingic.com. If you're not already subscribed to the show via your podcast platform, please do so. And if you could leave a review for us, that would be absolutely fantastic. We have links to other episodes at engagingic.com. All of our previous episodes are available there. And if you're interested in our visual communication services, our big pictures, our learning maps, our explainer videos, and also our live graphic recording, please get in touch with us again at info@thebigpicturepeople.co.uk. Thank you.